You'll be meeting the CEO shortly, my assistant said, handing over 2 glasses of water to the nervous-looking men sitting in the lobby. From behind the tinted glass of my corner office, I watched them. I could feel my stomach tighten, not from nerves, but from the weight of the moment. Because those 2 men, both now suited up and fidgeting with their resumes in hand, were once the reason I cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count. Josh Bennett and Tyler Collins. They had no idea. They had no idea that the girl they used to trip in the school hallway, the one they called Walmart trash, the one they laughed at for wearing the same sneakers every year, now owned the entire company they were begging to be hired into. I didn't walk out to greet them right away. I sat still, composed. I took a sip of my coffee and watched as they whispered to each other nervously. Tyler kept checking his reflection in his phone. Josh tapped his fingers anxiously on the armrest. I remember that sound. That exact rhythm. The one he used to do while throwing pennies at me on the bus. My assistant buzzed in. Miss Carter, would you like me to send in the next candidates? There was a pause because I hesitated. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I needed to feel it. All of it. The shame. The silence. The years of pretending it didn't matter. And now the power. Yes, I said slowly. Send them in. The door opened a moment later. They walked in like they owned the place. That same fake confidence. Tyler even gave me a little nod before looking down at his papers.
Hi, he said.
Thanks for seeing us. I'm Tyler, and this is Josh. We're so excited for the opportunity to join Carter Group Media. Neither of them looked me in the eye. Until I spoke. Nice to meet you, I said, standing up. Their eyes shifted toward me. At first, nothing. Just polite smiles. Then confusion. Then something else. Recognition. Josh blinked first. His jaw dropped slightly. Wait, Madison? I tilted my head. I gave a small smile, but not a warm one. Yes, Madison Carter. Tyler looked like he'd seen a ghost. As in, Madison from Millstone High. I nodded. The silence in the room grew so thick, I could feel the air shift. For a second, they both laughed nervously, like it was all just some cosmic joke. Like the girl they once humiliated daily couldn't possibly be standing in front of them, in heels, in silk, in control. Tyler recovered faster. Wow, look at you. You look amazing. I mean, this place is incredible. You really made it big. I said nothing. I gestured for them to sit. They sat. I watched them squirm, and part of me, a part one didn't know still existed, whispered, make them feel it. But I stayed calm. Tell me, I said, folding my hands, what makes you think you'd be a good fit here? Josh cleared his throat. We both bring strong backgrounds in digital marketing and campaign development. We've worked with some major brands over the last 5 years. I raised my brow. And what's your take on inclusive branding? They exchanged glances. Josh stammered, inclusive as in like diversity? Yes, I said. As in making sure people from all backgrounds, including those who grew up without privilege, are represented, respected, and not mocked for wearing discount clothes or bringing government lunch cards. The air turned ice cold. Tyler looked down. Josh opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't give them the chance to explain. Don't worry, I said. This interview isn't about your past. At least not entirely. I stood up and walked around to the window, looking out over the skyline. It was a view I dreamed about when I was 15, walking home in wet shoes because I couldn't afford the bus. I built this company from scratch, I said without turning around. I did it by working nights, eating canned soup, and taking out loans I was terrified I couldn't repay. Every piece of this office, every award, every contract, every account, was built from rejection. Including yours. I turned back to face them. And now I get to decide who walks through these doors. Josh swallowed hard. Tyler finally spoke. We were kids, Madison, he said. We were stupid. I'm really sorry. I believed he meant it. A little. But sorry doesn't rewind time. Sorry doesn't fill a stomach or clean the ketchup off your locker. I leaned on the edge of my desk. Do you know what it feels like, I asked quietly, to walk into a cafeteria and hear your name followed by laughter? Neither of them spoke. Or to sit in a classroom and pretend you can't hear what they're whispering about your clothes. To pretend it doesn't hurt? Because if you let it hurt, they win more? They looked down. I do, I said. Silence. The clock ticked once. Then twice. I picked up their resumes. Your skills are impressive, I said, placing them neatly on the desk. And the position is still open. Their heads lifted. But, I continued, I'll need time to consider if your values align with mine. You'll hear back in 2 weeks. They stood up. Of course, Josh said. Thank you for your time, Miss Carter. Ms. Carter. I nodded. They turned and left. The moment they stepped out and the door shut, I exhaled. Not in satisfaction, but in release. Not because I won, but because I was finally free. Free from needing their approval. Free from seeking justice. Free from proving anything to anyone but myself. I walked over to the window, once more. The skyline didn't change, but I had. I reached for my phone and pulled up the Notes app. Typed just one line. They once laughed at me. Today they shook my hand. Before I was Ms. Carter, the CO, I was just Madison, the girl with the stained backpack. The one who sat quietly in the back of every classroom, trying not to draw attention to her worn-out sneakers or the way her stomach growled just before lunch. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the east side of town, me, my mom, and my younger brother Liam. My dad left when I was 8. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. Because by that age, I had already learned something important. Questions were for kids who had time to be kids. I didn't have that luxury. I was the one who packed Liam's school lunch in the morning, peanut butter sandwiches and tap water in reused bottles. I was the one who babysat him after school while Mom worked the night shift at the nursing home, feet blistered, bones tired, soul barely hanging on.
We didn't complain.
We didn't cry out for help. We just survived. But the world still noticed, and not in a good way. Middle school was the first battlefield. That's when the other kids noticed my uniform didn't fit right, that my books were secondhand, that I never joined the field trips or fundraisers, that I didn't have an iPhone or glittery pencil case or name brand anything. It started with side glances, then whispers, then giggles, then cruelty dressed as just kidding. Tyler and Josh were kings of the lunchroom, born into money, confidence, and the privilege of ignorance. Their jokes were always loud, their laughter louder. Looks like Madison got her clothes from the lost and found again, Tyler would say. Hey, Maddie, if you're cold, maybe your dad can buy you a coat. Oh, wait, Josh once sneered during a winter morning. They didn't even know me, but they decided I was easy to pick on because I wouldn't talk back, because I didn't have anyone backing me. Even teachers ignored it. Some smiled awkwardly. Others said, just ignore them, sweetie. They'll grow out of it. But words leave bruises no one sees. At home, I never told my mom. She already carried too much. Instead, I wrote everything down. In spiral notebooks. Stories where I was the hero. The girl who built empires. The girl who had bodyguards and private jets and a boardroom full of people who respected her. I didn't realize it then, but those stories saved me. They gave me a place to hide. A place where I could breathe. High school wasn't much better. I got a part-time job cleaning offices after school. I'd come in smelling like Windex and exhaustion. Tyler once spotted me in my janitor's uniform, pushing a cart through the back of a building his dad owned. You work here? He laughed.
Damn, Maddie.
From math class to mops. That one stayed with me. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said it. Like it was impossible to be both smart and poor. Like needing a job made me less than him. There was no prom dress. No sweet 16.
No college tours.
Instead, there were food stamps, rent notices, stacks of rejection letters from internships I couldn't afford to take anyway. But I kept writing, and I kept working, and slowly, piece by piece, I learned something I'll never forget. Pain is a forge. It can either break you or shape you. And I chose the latter. My mother always said, Madison, your heart is your compass, but your mind is your map. Use both. She passed away my freshman year of college.
Kidney failure.
No insurance. She hid how bad it was until it was too late. I remember holding her hand in that hospital room. It was cold, but her voice was strong. "You were born for more," she whispered. "Don't let them dim your fire." And I didn't. After that, it was just me and Liam. I promised him I'd get us out of that apartment, out of that town. I juggled 3 jobs while studying business on scholarships and grant money. I'd sleep on the library floor between classes. I barely had enough for food, but I made sure Liam never felt it. I kept telling myself, one more year, one more step, one more dream closer. It wasn't glamorous. No movie montage. Just grit. Just hunger, the kind that pushes you beyond survival and into legacy. By the time I was 24, I had launched my first freelance brand campaign. It went viral. A message about authenticity, rooted in the real stories of overlooked people. I had learned how to speak to the people like me, because I was them. That was the beginning of Carter Group Media. No investors. Just pure strategy, storytelling, and soul.
And now?
Now we're one of the fastest growing agencies on the East Coast. We specialize in inclusive branding, highlighting the voices big companies forget to listen to. We've launched entire movements. We've won awards. And yes, we have very nice office furniture. But every time I sit at my desk, I still remember that cafeteria. That look on my mom's face when she opened another shut-off notice. That hollow feeling after being laughed at in the hallway. That's why I never hire based on pedigree. I hire based on character. So when Tyler and Josh walked into my lobby, that wasn't just karma. That was full circle. Because you can't fake humility. And you can't teach decency to people who were never told no. It happened on a Tuesday. We were just a few weeks away from finalizing a major partnership deal with a high-profile wellness startup. I had poured my soul into the campaign pitch, midnight revisions, meetings, strategy calls, you name it. And when the email finally came in, I wasn't even CC'd. It was addressed to the other 2 co-founders. After careful review, we've decided to move forward without Madison. We believe her background may not align with our luxury brand image. Those were their words.
Cold. Direct.
No fluff. Her background may not align. Like poverty was a tattoo they could see. Like growing up without a trust fund was a disqualification.
I didn't yell.
I didn't throw my coffee or storm into anyone's office. I just sat there.
Still.
Frozen. For 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 15. I read that line over and over again like maybe, just maybe, it would mean something different the 6th time. It didn't. Later that day, I found out where that rejection really came from. One of the junior execs on their team was, guess who? Tyler. Yes, that Tyler. The one who used to laugh when I pulled coins out of my sock for lunch. He'd climbed the ranks of the startup world through his father's connections. He hadn't built anything. He'd inherited everything. And apparently, he still couldn't let go of the version of me he had bullied in high school. I found out from one of my consultants. She overheard a conversation. Tyler said Madison wouldn't make the brand look aspirational enough. Said her story was too gritty, too real. That it might make high-end clients uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? Uncomfortable is watching your mother skip dinner so you can eat. Uncomfortable is walking 3 miles to a job that pays $9 an hour because the bus pass is $20 you don't have. But sure, my life was too real. They didn't even give me a chance to speak for myself. They just erased me. That's when the shift happened. Not rage. Not revenge. Something quieter.
Deeper.
Like a wire inside me had finally snapped, and in its place, something stronger formed. Because the truth was, I didn't want their table. I wanted to build a new one. One where the chairs weren't reserved for people with last names that opened doors. One where no one had to pretend their trauma was a liability. Later that week, Josh, yes, that Josh, also popped up. He was applying for a junior strategist role at Carter Group Media. I didn't recognize his name at first. But when he walked into the interview room, time froze. Same smug smile. Same polished shoes. A little less hair. Madison, he said, voice lifting with fake surprise. Wow, this is your company. I smiled. A calm, professional one. The kind I reserve for moments like this.
He kept talking.
About his experience, his portfolio, how he was excited to grow with a fresh, diverse brand like ours. He had no idea. No idea I remembered every joke. No idea I still heard his voice in my sleep, laughing at my shoes, my bag, my face.
And now?
He was pitching himself to me. The full circle moment didn't come with fireworks. Just quiet satisfaction. I didn't call him out. I didn't embarrass him. I thanked him for coming. I told him we'd be in touch. And we were. With a short, polite rejection email. No explanation. Because I didn't need to explain. The days that followed brought a strange mix of clarity and grief. Grief for all the years I had tried to fit into rooms that were never meant to hold me. Clarity that I was done shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. That moment, the rejection from the startup, the realization that my past still followed me like a shadow, didn't break me. It set me free. Free from seeking approval. Free from tiptoeing around people who didn't respect the weight I carried. Free from the idea that I had to be polished to be powerful. And most of all, free from needing anyone's permission to be who I've always been. I didn't quit. I didn't break. I just shifted. Something inside me snapped back into place. Not angrily. Not loudly. But with a kind of quiet clarity that only comes after years of being bent out of shape to please people who were never rooting for me. That night, I turned off all notifications on my phone. Deleted the Slack channels. Canceled back-to-back meetings for the rest of the week. I didn't owe anyone my burnout anymore. For the first time in months, I closed my laptop before midnight. I made a cup of tea, sat on the tiny balcony of my apartment, and just breathed. And, in that silence, I realized I was done performing. Done trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it, or worse, didn't want to. The next day, I made decisions. Big ones. I pulled out of the partnership deal with the wellness brand, the one that Tyler had tried to cut me out of. We'd been negotiating from a place of eagerness, of hunger.
But now?
Now I saw what it really was, an invitation to compromise my voice, my story, my truth, to water myself down for the comfort of polished egos. So I said no. Not with fanfare. Not with a dramatic exit email. Just a calm message to my legal team. We're stepping away. No counteroffers. And just like that, silence. On their end, I mean. But in my own head, the loudest silence I'd ever heard, and the most peaceful. I didn't stop there. I revisited our client list. There were brands that had always made me feel small. Ones that made backhanded comments about our urban tone or raw visuals. Ones that loved my story but didn't want me to appear in their campaigns because it didn't fit the brand aesthetic. I dropped them, one by one. Again, no anger. No scenes. Just clarity. You don't have to burn bridges when you're building your own damn city. Then I turned inward. I called a meeting just my core team. The ones who had been with me since our early garage office days. We sat in our new glass-walled conference room, sunlight pouring in from downtown LA. I looked at them, these brilliant minds, these real ones, and said, no more shape-shifting. No more bending ourselves to fit into brands that only want our sparkle but not our scars. From now on, we align with truth, with power, with realness. And if that costs us some big names,
so be it.
I'm done chasing tables. We're building our own. The room was quiet for a second. And then, applause. Real, raw, messy applause. Some of them had tears in their eyes. They got it. They'd felt it too. After that day, everything changed. Not suddenly, but steadily. We updated our mission statement. We added a clause to our contracts about representation, dignity, and respect, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes too. We started mentoring high school girls from underserved communities, offering internships that paid well, not just experience. And I stopped posting boss babe content. Instead, I shared truth. Stories about my mom, about cleaning offices, about getting rejected. People responded, because truth is magnetic. And the wild part? The more I let go, the more we grew. We started attracting new clients, ones that got it, ones that didn't flinch when I talked about food stamps or housing insecurity, ones that celebrated the same voice Tyler tried to silence. And slowly, the power shifted. Not just in the company.
In me.
I used to feel like I owed the world an explanation for who I was.
Now?
I say what I mean. I don't apologize when I speak with passion. I take up space. And if someone doesn't like it, that's their discomfort to unpack, not mine. A few weeks after I stepped back, I got an email. From Tyler. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I didn't open it right away. I went for a walk instead. Let the wind clear my head. When I finally read it, I laughed, not cruelly, just softly. It was full of empty words. Sorry if things came across wrong. I've always respected what you've built. Maybe we can revisit the partnership from a different angle.
I didn't reply.
Not because I was angry, but because I was finally free. I didn't need validation. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need a redo. I just needed peace. And I had it. Sometimes silence is the most powerful thing you can offer someone who underestimated you. Not a clapback. Not a takedown. Not even a "look at me now." Just silence. Because silence means I no longer need to explain. I no longer need to be chosen. I already chose myself. It started with a LinkedIn message.
Short. Direct.
Almost suspiciously polite. "Hi, Madison. I know we've never met, but I've followed your work since the early Carter Group campaigns. I recently learned something about you that I can't stop thinking about. Would you be open to a quick coffee chat?" At first, I thought it was spam. Or maybe a veiled pitch from another agency. But something about the name, Ava Ramos, rang a faint bell. I couldn't place it, but my gut nudged me not to ignore it. So I replied. We met the following week at a quiet cafe tucked into a side street near downtown. She walked in wearing jeans, a navy blazer, and a warm smile that instantly disarmed me. "Thank you for meeting," she said, sitting down. "I wasn't sure you'd respond." "I wasn't either," I smiled. But curiosity won. She took a breath, then said words I wasn't expecting. "You helped my grandmother. You probably don't remember. But I do." I blinked, confused. I'm sorry." She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn photograph. A hospital bed. A frail woman smiling, holding a hand-painted card. "That's her. Dolores Ramos. You met her when you were working part-time at the hospital gift shop in Glendale. I was only 17, but I visited every weekend. You used to bring her tea, talk with her when the nurses were busy. You even saved up and gave her that scarf she's wearing. She loved it so much." I stared at the photo, a wave of memory crashing in. I remembered Dolores. Sweet, soft-spoken. Always asked me about my dreams. She said I had eyes that looked like I knew things. Back then, I was just a scared college sophomore with 2 jobs and a dream I barely admitted to myself. Ava continued, her voice catching. She passed away the year after.
But she always talked about you.
She said, "That girl Madison? She's going to build something beautiful." And just like that, my throat tightened. My eyes stung. Because I had forgotten her. Not on purpose, but because life moved so fast. So loud. And yet here was this stranger, telling me I mattered to someone when I didn't even know I had. Turns out Ava was a creative director at a rising nonprofit media network focused on stories of resilience. "I've followed your journey," she said. Quietly at first. But after hearing about that wellness deal and how you walked away, I had to reach out.
She paused.
"I just wanted you to know, people see you.
The real you.
Not the version they try to edit. Not the girl they bullied. Your force. And you've always been." I didn't know what to say. No client had ever said that to me. No investor. No partner. Not even my old friends. I had poured years into building an image that was finally being seen, not by the industry elite, but by the people who had watched from the margins. Ava didn't want a deal. She wasn't angling for anything. She just wanted to tell me I mattered. And in doing so, something cracked open in me. A week later, I received an email from one of my mom's old friends. "Miss Carter, the retired librarian who'd known me since elementary school. Subject: saw you on Ava's podcast. Inside was a link. Ava had mentioned me in a recent episode. Talked about the unsung kindness of strangers, about how Madison Carter changed the trajectory of my heart and doesn't even know it. My story, the parts one never posted, were echoing back to me through someone else's voice. And this time, the narrative wasn't edited to make me palatable. It was true. That single ripple started more. Old teachers reached out. A classmate who used to sit quietly beside me in the back row, she wrote a letter. I saw how they treated you. I didn't say anything then, but I want you to know I remember. And I see what you've done with your pain. You turned it into light.
Light.
That word repeated in my mind over and over. Not luxury. Not aspirational. Not high-end.
Light.
It was never about shining perfectly. It was about being seen in the dark. And then something strange happened. My story, the real one, began to circulate online.
Not as a marketing campaign.
Not as a PR stunt, but as a whispered truth in threads, in comments, in testimonials. She hired me when no one else would. She spoke to me like I mattered. She made me feel human again. These weren't clients. They were assistants, interns, delivery people, janitors. People I had thanked, noticed, listened to. They remembered. They told others. And the truth found its way home. One of our newest clients, a globally known lifestyle platform, told me during our first pitch meeting, "You came recommended by 5 different people in completely unrelated industries." That's rare. But what stood out? Every single one of them used the same word, integrity. I didn't cry in that meeting, but later that night I did. Because I realized, the people who really matter, they see you before the world does. And sometimes long after you've forgotten to see yourself. It started with a text from Lindsay. Yes, that Lindsay. The same girl who once flipped my lunch tray in middle school and laughed when I had to scrape mashed potatoes off my thrift store jeans. The same Lindsay who later became the office favorite at my first agency job, always ready with a smirk and a whisper about how Madison talks like she's auditioning for a scholarship. She messaged me on Instagram of all places.
Hey girl, wow. Just saw your feature. So proud of you.
We should catch up. Been forever. Forever.
Right.
It had been forever since she tried to humiliate me in front of our director by mocking my Dollar Tree heels. It had been forever since she used to call me welfare Barbie. But here she was. Suddenly proud.
I didn't respond.
2 days later, my former boss, the one who once denied me a raise because the hungry ones hustle harder, sent me an email. Madison, congratulations on everything you've built. What you're doing for women in business is truly inspirational. I was wondering if you'd be open to speaking at our leadership summit in September. We'd love to feature you as a keynote.
Keynote.
The same woman who laughed in my face when I pitched a diversity mentorship program now wanted me to be the face of empowered leadership. Damage control had begun. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because people were watching now. Then came the flood. 3 more emails from old colleagues who used to accidentally leave me out of lunch meetings. A voice memo from Shelby, the one who once called me too intense behind my back and told interns not to overshare trauma like Madison does.
Now?
Hey girl, I was just telling someone how I always knew you were destined for greatness. So happy to see you thriving.
Lies.
Thinly veiled attempts to rewrite history. They wanted a piece of the story now that it looked good on a resume. But what struck me most? The apology came not from the worst offenders, but from someone unexpected. Kayla. She was never outright cruel. But she never stepped in either. She benefited from my silence. And now she emailed me a full letter. It wasn't performative. It wasn't a let's collab. It was raw. I've replayed so many moments in my head, Madison. Times I should have spoken up. Times I laughed when I should have said, that's not okay.
I'm sorry.
I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong. And I've never forgotten you. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not pity. Not anger. But freedom. Because I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was looking at truth. But the real test came when my bullies, my actual bullies, the ones now working under my consulting firm, got wind that a feature story was being written about me. An independent journalist was putting together a piece called From Welfare Line to Boardroom, The Quiet Power of Madison Carter. And apparently it had sparked some internal panic. Lindsay showed up at my office, uninvited. I was in the middle of reviewing a pitch deck when my assistant buzzed in. "There's someone here asking to speak with you. She says you two go way back." I knew who it was before I even looked up. "Send her away," I said calmly. No explanation. 5 minutes later, I got a text. "You're really not going to talk to me? You're better than that. Can we please just clear the air? There's no need to make this messy."
Messy.
That's the word they always used when they lost control. Later that week, an HR rep from my former agency called my firm, wanted to verify details about the time I worked there, wanted to know if I had plans to name names in any upcoming public statements. My assistant handled it, but I read the transcript she typed after. They're worried. The words toxic culture were used 3 times. They kept repeating, "We'd love to connect with Madison again and offer her a platform for collaboration." I laughed. Not bitterly, not cruelly, but with the kind of clarity that only comes when you've already won the battle and walked off the field. And then came the final attempt, a dinner invite, sent from a shared email chain with 5 former coworkers, including the 2 who used to joke that my budget-friendly handbags were emotionally exhausting. The subject line? "Madison, let's reconnect. We've changed." Inside, they wrote about growth, maturity, and how proud they were. They asked if we could turn a new page. They offered to host at a rooftop restaurant I could never afford in my 20s. I didn't reply, but I saved the email, not for evidence, not to post online, but to remind myself how far I had come without their help, and how I was never the one who needed fixing. Because that's what damage control really is. Not accountability, just fear dressed up in sentiment. And I was done being sentimental about people who broke me and only showed up when the cameras did. It came on a Wednesday, a rainy, gray, ordinary Wednesday, the kind where your coffee's cold before you finish the first sip, and every meeting runs 10 minutes long. I had just wrapped up a call with a potential investor, someone interested in expanding our women-led startup initiative into inner-city schools. And as I was heading to lunch, my assistant stopped me. "Madison," she said, holding a small white envelope. "This came in the mail. Handwritten." That already surprised me. Nobody sends handwritten letters anymore. But something about the way she handed it to me, like it was delicate, almost sacred, made me pause. I slid a finger beneath the seal, and inside was a note card with gold edges. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Mrs. Ellison, my high school art teacher. Mrs. Ellison. The only adult back then who ever asked if I'd eaten lunch. The one who gave me leftover canvases and whispered, "Your talent isn't about money. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 15 years. But there it was, her neat cursive, still looping her, wise with extra care. "Dear Madison, I saw your article." I cried the whole way through. I remember that quiet girl who used to sit in the back of the classroom, painting galaxies with dollar store brushes while the other kids ignored her. "You once gave me a card made from scrap paper. It said, 'Thank you for seeing me.' I kept it. I don't know if you realize this, but you saw me too. You made me feel like I mattered, in a job where most teachers fade into the background. Now the world sees what I saw all along. With so much love, Mrs. Ellison." I stood there holding the letter like it was made of glass. And for a moment, I wasn't the CEO. I wasn't the keynote speaker or the Forbes featured founder. I was just Madison, the girl who used to stay late in the art room because it felt like the only place in the world where breathing didn't hurt. And suddenly, I cried. Not the silent, dignified kind, but real, gasping sobs that rose from somewhere so deep I didn't even know it was still inside me. Because this wasn't about validation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about being seen. Truly, deeply, finally seen. Later that day, I framed that card and placed it on my bookshelf, right next to my degree and my first business license. Because of everything I've earned in this life, that note, it meant the most. But that wasn't the only message that found me. A week later, I got a DM from a girl named Jasmine. She said she was 19, working part-time at a diner, and trying to save up for design school. She wrote, "I don't have anyone in my corner. But then I read your story. You made me believe I'm not trash just because I can't afford nice things. Thank you for showing people like me that we're not broken. We're just waiting to be discovered by ourselves." And that's when I realized something powerful. The kindness you give in silence doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits until the noise dies down, until the crowds leave, until the fake apologies fade. Then it comes back, louder than any insult, stronger than any lie. I began receiving messages weekly. From old classmates who had grown up and realized their cruelty. From young women who had been mocked for thrifted shoes and lunch assistance cards. From mothers who said they read my story to their daughters at night. And even from men who admitted they used to laugh at girls like me until their own kids opened their eyes. But it wasn't the quantity of messages. It was their weight. Each one a seed of kindness, finally blooming years later. Then came the moment that felt like the full circle had completed. Our firm launched a mentorship program, pairing underprivileged high school girls with professionals across industries. We named it Project See Me. And at the first official luncheon, I stood at the podium, scanning the crowd. So many young faces. Nervous. Hopeful. Some wearing worn-out shoes, just like I once did. I shared my story. I told them about the lockers slammed shut with my name on them, about the girls who whispered behind cupped hands, about the nights I counted change to buy art supplies instead of lunch. And then I said, but the world didn't break me. It tried. But I had art. I had Mrs. Ellison. And now, you have me. I see you. All of you. And I promise, you're not invisible anymore. After the applause faded, a girl named Aria came up to me. She looked barely 15. She had tears in her eyes as she handed me a folded napkin. On it, in shaky handwriting, she'd written, "Thank you for proving that pain doesn't disqualify us. It prepares us." I knelt, hugged her, and whispered, "You're going to change the world. Just start by believing you already matter." And that was the emotional payoff. Not money, not revenge, not power, but the quiet, sacred knowing that the pain had been worth something. That someone else would walk a softer path because you cleared the stones. That the love you gave in the dark had finally come home. Like a long-lost song finding its voice again. It started small. An email from Taylor. Just a single line in the subject line.
Hey.
Just checking in. No apology. No context. Just a casual reach back and like we hadn't spent years oceans apart. Not by distance, but by silence and choice.
I stared at it for a long time.
And then, I archived it. Didn't delete it.
Didn't reply.
Just let it slide into the background where it belonged. But the universe doesn't always take subtlety as an answer. A few weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I don't answer those. But something nudged me, curiosity maybe. Madison? It's Ryan. Ryan. The ringleader of my high school humiliation. The guy who once tripped me in front of a crowd and said, "Sorry, didn't see you down there. Guess poor girls don't make a lot of noise." That Ryan. Now, his voice was softer. Tentative. "Hey, I was wondering, would you be open to grabbing coffee sometime? I've been thinking a lot about how things went down back then. A bunch of us have. We'd love to reconnect." Reconnect? I almost laughed. But instead, I was quiet. Very quiet. Let him fill the silence. "I mean, it's crazy, right? You're like this big deal now. We all saw your Forbes feature. Honestly, we're proud of you." There it was. The transactional reach. Not guilt. Not remorse. But pride, because now I was someone they could name drop. I took a breath. "Ryan, I appreciate the call. I do. But I'm not looking to reconnect with anyone from back then." His voice caught for a second.
Oh.
"No, I get it. It's just maybe we were stupid kids. And people grow, right?
They do, I said.
And I have. Which is why I'm saying no, kindly but firmly. I wish you well. But I'm not opening that door again. Then I ended the call. No yelling. No list of what he'd done. No demand for closure.
Just peace.
And a firm boundary. A few days later, the messages multiplied. Taylor again. Would love to meet sometime, just to catch up, smiley face. Another smiley. Another half effort. Then came Jenna, yes, that Jenna, sending me a long DM on Instagram. Hey girl. I was just thinking about that time we all went to that field trip together, remember?
Ha!
Wild days. Anyway, I work in marketing now, would love to collaborate on something. Collaborate? The same girl who once told everyone my mom cleaned houses for a living and mimicked it in front of the school bus? Now she wanted a collab?
I didn't respond.
I didn't even finish reading it. And it wasn't out of bitterness. I just didn't feel obligated to give people access to the healed version of me when they helped break the earlier one. I had changed, not in the flashy, vengeful way they feared, but in the quiet, dignified way that said, I don't need to win against you. I've already won within myself. But the real moment came during a local gala. I had been invited to speak at a youth empowerment event, and as I stood near the refreshment table, sipping sparkling water, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Mrs. Anderson, my old high school counselor. She looked older, a bit grayer, but her voice was still warm. Madison, you've done well. Thank you, I said genuinely. You know, she continued, a few of your old classmates were talking recently. They were wondering if you'd ever come to the reunion. I smiled, polite but distant. I won't. Mind if I ask why? Because I remember who I was back then. And I remember what they made me feel about that girl. I've spent years trying to love her again. I won't risk losing her just to be polite. She blinked, nodded slowly. That's fair. And that was it. No drama. No confrontation. Just clarity. It wasn't anger that held the door shut. It was love for myself. For the girl I used to be, the woman I've become, and the peace I worked so hard to earn. I don't hate them. I genuinely hope they've grown, that they're better people now with more kindness in their hearts. But I don't need to be the test of that growth. So, when the next reunion invite came in the mail, gold embossed, with RSVP cards and smiling pictures from the class of 2010, I opened it, smiled softly, and then tossed it into the recycling bin. No fanfare. No rant online. No burning bridges. Just a quiet no. And it felt like freedom. That's the thing no one tells you about closure. You don't need their apology. You don't even need the conversation. Sometimes the deepest healing comes from choosing your own peace and letting silence say what words never could. If you've made it this far, maybe your story feels a little like mine. Maybe you were the one who walked through the halls pretending you didn't hear the whispers. Maybe you laughed along with the jokes, even when they were about you. Maybe your clothes didn't match, your shoes had holes, your lunch came from a government program, and they made sure you never forgot it. Or maybe your wounds aren't about money. Maybe they teased you because of your body, or the way you talked, or who you loved, or who your parents weren't. Maybe they didn't laugh at you. Maybe they just looked through you, made you feel like air, like space they walked through but never saw. If that was you, I want you to hear me now. You didn't deserve any of it. Not the jokes. Not the silence. Not the way they made you feel small just so they could feel big. For years, I thought if I could just be successful enough, pretty enough, powerful enough, it would all be worth it. That somehow, my success would rewrite the story. But here's what I learned. Success doesn't heal shame. Loving yourself does. You can build the empire, wear the designer dress, drive the car with your name on the lease. But if you still carry their words in your chest like broken glass, it'll all just be noise. It wasn't the Forbes article that changed me. It wasn't the corner office, or the paycheck, or the team of people who now call me ma'am. It was a Tuesday night, sitting alone in my apartment, eating dinner off a chipped plate, and realizing, I'm not hungry for their approval anymore. That was the real victory. And here's the twist no one expects. When you finally stop chasing revenge and start choosing peace, you become untouchable. Because their opinions don't hold weight in a world you no longer belong to. To the girl watching this with tears in her eyes, because someone made her feel less than, I want to say this. You are not the names they gave you. You are not the silence you sat in. You are not the absence of the things they flaunted. You are the fire that kept burning quietly, long after they walked away. You're the late night studying, the babysitting job, the notebooks full of dreams, the scraped-together outfits, and the perfectly packed lunch your mama made with love and coupons. You're the kindness that didn't break, even when they tried to make you bitter. You're the strength that whispered, just wait. They'll see. And whether they see or not, you do. You see yourself now. And I promise you, that's enough. One day, they might reach out. They'll say, hey, it's been a while. Or, you've changed so much. They'll talk about the good old days, as if those weren't the days that taught you how to cry without making a sound. You'll have the chance to open the door, to prove you're bigger, kinder, more forgiving.
But you don't owe them that.
You don't owe anyone access to the healed version of you when they didn't respect the broken one. Forgiveness isn't always about welcome mats and second chances. Sometimes it's a quiet breath that says, I release you, but I will not return to you. Let them wonder. Let them watch. Let them rewrite the story in their heads. You don't need to defend yourself. You lived it. You survived it. You became someone without them. And that's the greatest revenge of all. So, here's my final message to you. The person who knows what it feels like to be the outsider. You are not too much. You are just too real for people who pretend. You were never the problem. You are just the proof that goodness could survive cruelty. And now, you're the proof that healing is possible. That silence can be powerful. That walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. If no one told you today, I'm proud of you. Not because you're rich or successful or finally worthy, but because you made it this far.
Because you kept going.
Because you didn't let their words write your ending. You did. And it's beautiful. Sometimes, not showing up is the most powerful thing you can do. Sometimes, the door you don't open is the one that sets you free. Sometimes, silence is not emptiness, it's peace. And that peace? You earned it.